Hello everybody, welcome back. If you are a returning viewer, welcome if you are new. As always, my name is Addie and this is the Knits by AJ Knitting Podcast, and we are doing things a little bit differently today. So usually I film these every 2 weeks and I do the usual format of like finished objects, works in progress, acquisitions, any other chat, that kind of thing. But I keep finding that I will film a podcast and then anything that's kind of like close to finishing, I will then get really inspired to want to finish that. I'll finish the piece and then it will be like a good week and a half before I then film again, and so I kind of feel like I have to keep everything like perfect until I film again. And sometimes I kind of forget what I want to talk about, I write notes and then I lose them, that kind of thing. But I thought it might just be a little bit better to do this weekly. So we're going to give it a go. Let me know if you prefer this kind of format of filming. But yeah, got myself a cup of tea as always, and I will get into my projects. So I don't have any finished objects today. It is all whips. And so there are a few of them. First of all, what I'm wearing. So I said last time that I was going to wear my latest finished object in my newest podcast, and it is my summer cable top by Iris of HIRIS Make. I talked about it as a finished object in my last episode if you want to go back and watch that and see it in a bit more depth. And I did film some b-roll of me wearing it, but this is just what it looks like on the body underneath my cardi because it's chilly. And one thing I will say about it, I knit mine up in Filcolana Saga in the colour Peach Blossom, which is a 100% lamb's wool woolen spun yarn, and it's a fingering weight tee with the all over cable pattern. One thing I will say is that the sleeves on mine, which you won't really see today because it is chilly, the sleeves on mine are slightly baggy. There is just a little bit of extra fabric there, which doesn't need to be there, but the numbers for the sleeves have been reworked in the pattern. It was just I didn't really want to reknit my sleeves because it doesn't bother me that much. It gives me a little bit more movement, and yeah, it's not an issue to me, but the sleeves in the pattern will be more in line with the rest of the garment, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that is my summer cable top by Iris Makes, and then I've just paired it today with my jacket number 1 by My Favourite Things Knitwear, which I talked about last week. I knit it in the colour Vela from World of Wool in the Isle base, and which is a 100% British wool Aran weight, and it's lovely. I wear it all the time, but I am now kind of realising that I said at the beginning of the year that I wanted more cardigans, and now I really feel like I need more cardigans because I keep knitting t-shirts and it's too cold to wear them on their own. So yeah, I need more cardigans. Anyway, so that is what I'm wearing, and I have got 5 whips to talk about today in varying stages of completion. So yeah, we'll get into it. First up, I have got my Musselburgh hat, which is a pattern by YSOLDA TEAGUE, and I am knitting so this is my 4th Musselburgh so far, my 3rd one of this year, 4th one so far overall, and I'm knitting this one up in Dandelion and Dogwood's, I think it's called Fairy Sock, but it's their sparkle base sock yarn in the colour Candy Cane Peppermint Bark, and the yarn looks like this. I showed it last week. It's just this mix of like pinks and greens and sort of cream on a sparkle base, and this cake is definitely looking a little bit worse for wear now because I talked about last week how I was gonna need to start doing helical knitting, and I had started it, I think. Yeah, I had started helical knitting, but I had only done maybe like 3 or 4 rounds, sorry. And yeah, I have obviously now done much more. So I'm knitting mine on a 3mm needle, which gives me a 6.5 stitch gauge, and I am knitting the adult medium. So last time I showed this, I was here. So I had gotten through the increase and I had done I think I measured it and it was about 1.5 inches. And I started my helical knitting here, and then this was where I was last week. So yeah, I really hadn't done very much at all. And now we are up here. So yeah, there's been a fair amount of progress on this. And I think we can see, oh, there we go. I think we can see that there has been a definite change in the pooling situation that I talked about happening last week. So it's no longer kind of like Battenberg, it's now like spiraling, which is what I was going for, really. I mean, I think it's really quite cool. I know that a lot of people would be like, oh, it's pooling, oh my goodness, I don't like it. But I actually really enjoy it. I think it kind of lends well into the name of the yarn, it being like candy cane peppermint bark. It's obviously a Christmas colourway, but I will be wearing this all year round whenever I need a hat. Obviously I'm not going to need a hat in the middle of August, but you know. Yeah, so I'm going to be wearing this all year round, but I like the fact that it's kind of spiraling round. I think it'll look really cool once it's finished. And I think the helical knitting has definitely helped sort that out. I'd rather spirals than Battenberg. So yeah, I think it's knitting up really well. This is definitely going a lot slower than my previous Musselburghs because of the helical knitting, and because I have to keep watching out for where my strand is. Usually when I knit these, I'm obviously just knitting in the round, and I like take them on days out, and I knit my Musselburghs when I'm editing. So it's slowed me down slightly, but not to the point where I'm not enjoying working on this. So we went out yesterday, did a bit of shopping, and I was like passenger in the car, so I took this out with me, did a little bit in the car, and I also knit on this yesterday evening because to be honest, I was just too tired to really like concentrate on anything else. So yeah, so a fair bit of progress on this, and I cast this on February the 24th, so this has currently been on my needles for 9 days. So yeah, that is my Musselburgh. Right, so whip number 2 is my socks for March, and these are the Dublin Memory Socks by ZANETE Knits. Every time I film, that's going to be a thing, isn't it? Where I can't work out how to say this designer's name. But okay, so yeah, it's the Dublin Memory Socks, and I am knitting these up in Cascade Heritage in the colours Snow and Moss. So these are my yarns. So Snow is my main colour and Moss is my contrast colour. I love these. I think unintentionally, as the pattern is called Dublin Memories, I think it's kind of quite on theme, but as I say, it was completely unintentional. They were just 2 yarns that I had in my sock stash, and so decided to use them up. But I am using 2.25mm needles, and I'm knitting size 1, and I was here last time I filmed, and so I have since then, so I think, yeah, I just finished like the foot and the heel, and this has got that beautiful like gusset increase business going on. Where is it? There it is. Underneath the foot, and then Japanese short rows into the slip stitch heel, and then it's got this beautiful colour work up the leg. So I've done all of the colour work and the ribbing and cast off my first sock, but I have not cast on my second one yet, so that will be a job for this week. And yeah, it was so much fun doing this colour work. I really like doing colour work socks at the moment. I really didn't think that I was going to be one of those people that liked colour work socks, and I thought that I really hated the feel of the floats underneath my foot. And I wore my little dot socks, little dot socks that I knit last month out shopping yesterday, and I was walking around for quite a while in them, and I didn't have any issues. So I think perhaps it was the yarn that I used in the first pair of colourwork socks that I knit, perhaps it was the pattern, perhaps it was like the concentration of the floats. I don't know, perhaps I do need to use a softer sock yarn when doing colourwork socks if the colourwork is going underneath my foot. But I think I just need to do, I think I need to do a bit more kind of testing with that. But yeah, so these ones have only got colourwork on the leg. I've knit these completely to pattern. So you work the cut, so there's two charts. So I worked the first one, and then there's an increase in here so that it doesn't end up being really tight around your leg. So yeah, they've done the increase, and then there's you essentially do two different colourwork charts to create this pattern. So you can see that like one of these kind of crisscrosses is slightly larger than the other. Like one has got more stitches in the middle to kind of give you like a seamless finish, because when you're wearing it and like when I'm holding this up, you can barely see that these two are different, but it gives you just that little bit extra room in the calf of the sock, which I think is really, really clever. And then you go into a 2x2 ribbing in your main colour, and that's maybe not the best side to show because obviously like I've got a bit of a loose stitch here where I've like cut my contrast yarn and not sewn in my end yet. But yeah, so it goes into a 2x2 rib at the top. And I used, so the pattern does give you a like a tutorial or a suggestion on what bind off to use, and I went rogue and did not do that. I thought, oh, I'll do a tubular bind off, a 2x2 tubular bind off, because that'll be really nice and sleek at the end of my sock and everything. And I think I'm gonna have to pull this back because this, I don't know if you can see, so that's how far I can like stretch the sock, and I can't stretch the bind off quite as much. And so it's fine, I can wear it, it fits on my foot perfectly fine, and it can go up on my leg, but it's just that little bit too tight on the bind off, and I think it's going to irritate me. And I think when the bind off is too tight, it kind of makes the sock want to fall like down the leg a bit too much. So I think what I'm going to do is pull back the bind off and all the lovely tubular bind off that I did, and just do a standard bind off, or like a, is it a Jenny's super stretchy bind off, that kind of thing, so that I can get a little bit more stretch in there, and hopefully stop it kind of, because it kind of does like that at the top of the sock, and I don't think that's particularly flattering. And obviously, yeah, like I said, it makes it fall down my foot, so, well, not my foot, my leg. So yeah, I think that's going to be where I go next before I cast on, or perhaps I will knit the whole of the second sock and do the different bind off on the other one and then see how I feel. Yeah, I think I'll do that. But yeah, colourwork was really simple to do. I think I showed last week that I swapped to a small circular to do the rest of the colourwork, and last week I was here and I've come all the way down the sock. So yeah, and I cast these on February the 24th, so these have currently been on my needles for 9 days. So that's not bad, because I am not one of those people that sits there and just knits socks from like start to finish. I like pick them up, put them down a lot. Okay, so whip number 3 is my festival dress by Petite Knit. It's a pattern that I am knitting up for my daughter. I'm using woolly knit super soft merino 4-ply in the colour rose, and I am using Wiku Yarns superwash merino in the homestead. One thing I will say, so this is the Wiku Yarns, I feel like I'm saying that wrong as well, but they are actually closing down their dye studio. They're no longer going to be dyeing, and so everything on their website at the moment is discounted. So if you do want to get hold of any of their yarns, then like now is kind of the time, because once it's gone really. So yeah, this is the contrast colour that I am using, and this is my main colour. And I do really like these yarns. This is my second of the main colour. I had to join one in a little while ago, and yeah, I think this is knitting up really well. I knew that it was going to be a pattern that I like because I've already knit the jumper version. I'm using 2.25 for my ribbings and 2.75mm needles for my main needle, and I'm knitting up to size 3 to 4, which is the 5th size in the pattern. So progress has been fine. It's kind of just easy going. I mean, it's a fingering weight dress for my almost 4-year-old, so it's not going to be like as super quick as knitting her a like chunky jumper or anything, but it's, yeah, it's going. So I have split for sleeves, and I've started on like the skirt portion of the dress. So I would usually get to the end of a ball of yarn and then start doing the sleeves, but because I've got the contrast colour connected to the body, I think I'm probably going to end up knitting all of the dress, like the skirt portion, and then go back and do the sleeves, which, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it feels like it's going faster than it probably is because I'm doing stripes, but usually I know a lot of people say that they get stuck on sleeve island. I get stuck on body island. I just it feels like it goes on forever. But yeah, so I have done the first increase of the skirt. Let me pull some of the yarn up so I can actually hold this up. So yeah, split for sleeves, and they are just currently on this tubing, and I've done, what would we say, about an inch? Yeah, about an inch down the skirt, and have started to, so I've done the first increase. I've started doing the first bobble stripe, but I have come into a bit of an issue in the pattern. So this is the last increase on the yoke, and I don't know if you can see, so that is like that there is my beginning of round, and you can see it kind of like there is a bit of a bump because obviously I'm knitting on a spiral, but that is fine. That's not something that bothers me. I know that that blocks out because it blocked out in the jumper version that I knit for her as well. But you see this bar here, this purple one, that is where you like catch the stitch, the first stitch of the round when you're doing the bobble stripe, and it's like it's perfectly seamless really because it just looks exactly the same, like apart from the fact that this stitch is slightly pulled because it's the beginning of round. Like if I pull that out, like you can barely see that that is where it, like that's where the round changes. And that was something that I liked because obviously the beginning of the round of this pattern is in the middle of the back, and so straight on at the back that's what you're going to see, but I know that that blocks out. However, for my size, and I've gone back and I've checked a couple of the other sizes in the pattern, and it seems to be that for a certain amount of the sizes they have the same problem that I'm having, where when you get to the skirt, every other increase is on an odd number of stitches, which means that you end up with I don't know how I'm going to show this. I might have to do a bit of B-roll to show this, but you end up with 2 stitches. Where is it? There. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see there because the marker's in the way. Hang on, let me move that. Yeah, so you end up with 2 stitches with a bar across them instead of just 1. And I just think it looks a bit funny. And it's because it is an odd number of stitches. So you start, like the bobble round is written the same way for each size. But even if you did like alternated the way that you do that, it would still be the same. And so I think I'm gonna have to go back and maybe either take out an increase or add in another increase on the skirt to make it an even number of stitches, and then like adjust it as I go down for each of the increases. Because I mean, I think it would be fine if it was the same all the way down, but because it's like going to be every other increase on the skirt, I think it just looks a bit funky. And I know that like I'm really scrutinizing it at the moment because that's where I am in the pattern, and maybe when I finished it would be fine, but I just think it looks a bit funny, and I will know. And I don't, yeah, for the sake of like 1 stitch, I don't think it's going to really make that much of a difference. So I think I'm just gonna adjust the increases. And I will add in notes to this on my Ravelry project page in case anybody else is knitting this size and comes across the same problem and it bothers them as much as it bothers me. So yeah, that is where I'm at with that one. And yeah, I just think, let me see if I can get it. I just think, yeah, it just looks funny because this one's got one and then this one's gonna have two. So yeah, that is my festival dress so far. I mean, it's going really well. Where's my marker? Oh, it's up here. So I was here last time and I have knit all of this. So yeah, good progress. It's quite easy breezy because it is just kind of like stockinette in the round for most of it, and then like the bobble rounds obviously break it up a little bit, but they keep it engaging. And so I cast this on February the 24th and it's currently been on my needles for 9 days, and that is my progress. So yeah, I think it's going well. I'm just going to have to do that changing of the stitch counts, which is kind of annoying, but I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's annoying. And Whitman 4 is my Alder Sweater by Rebecca CLOW, and I'm knitting this in BC Garn Loch Lomond in the colours Pine Tree, which is this beautiful kind of tweedy green, and Sand, which is this sort of kind of, it's pink with like flecks of red, but also kind of like beige in there as well. So yeah, I love my colour choice and I love this yarn. And I really like how this is working up. But I kind of ran into a problem with my row gauge. So I'm knitting this on 3.5mm needles as my main and 3mm as my ribbing, and I'm doing size 2. And I'm still on the yoke. So last time I showed this, I had done the neckband and I'd done all the short rows and everything, and I was here. So I was well into the increases, and I have done a fair few more increases since then. This is so light. I absolutely adore this yarn. It's another woolen spun yarn, and this just feels like nothing. For what I thought was going to be quite a dense, sort of heavy jumper, this is the opposite. It's definitely got some drape there, but it's so light. But I think it's going to be really, really warm as well, because like if I hold this up, that's the wrong side, obviously. There's not a huge amount of, yeah, if I hold this up, like there's not a huge amount of kind of gaps there. And from what I know about woolen spun, it like traps more air than a worsted spun, but I am no expert. And so I ran into an issue where I thought that my row gauge was really, really off. I do sometimes find that this is a bit of a problem with jumpers where a designer will knit continental and I knit English, and so my row gauge is often quite a lot shorter than the designer, and that is fine because usually you can just add in a few rows or rounds and it'll be fine. You just add in a little bit more length. But this pattern is sort of like, it's quite involved. It's definitely not I have to refer back to the pattern. So I'm getting there with like being able to memorize it and do it without kind of having to refer back to the pattern for every row, but it is definitely something that I need to have it open so that I can look back if I need to, which is fine. Like I really like the stitch pattern. I think it is a really beautiful, effective pattern, but yeah, I think I'm going to need to add in a few more pattern repeats before I split for sleeves. So I thought what I would do was block it. So that's why this isn't on a needle at the moment, because I decided to give it a nice sort of mid project block to get a bit more of an accurate row gauge. And so I think I'm going to have to knit maybe two more pattern repeats after I finish the increases, which, I mean, should be perfectly fine. Everybody knits differently, don't they? So I'm sure other people have had issues with row gauge. This is looking, I don't know, maybe I should try this on. Ooh, let's get this. Okay, I will just hang on to this so I can kind of, oh, okay. So yeah, I'm not as far off as I thought, because once I get sleeves and a body on this, I mean, this looks ridiculous. I'm wearing like three layers of knitwear. But yeah, once I get sleeves and a body on this, I mean, it's going to really pull it down as well, because the weight, although this is a really light yarn, the weight is definitely going to have an effect on the yoke. So I don't know. I mean, obviously the answer is that I need to keep knitting and get to the end of the yoke. But yeah, this has definitely grown a little bit in blocking, because it was kind of like on the tip of my shoulder before. So I've gotten a good amount out of it. And I think it's really been helped by the fact that I put the collar on, because now I know, sometimes I find when I knit and need to pick up for the collar and put it back on, I find that it kind of like stretches out much more, and then I'm shocked at how far up it's come when I put the collar on it. So I think that was a good idea. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, I need to finish the yoke and then like block it again and try it on. But I think actually the lesser, like my shorter row gauge it's not gonna make too much of a difference, because I have such a short space between like the tip of my shoulder and my underarm. And I don't tend to wear like tops underneath my jumpers that have got really low underarms. If I'm wearing a jumper like this, I'm probably going to be either wearing a vest, or like a lot of my t-shirts have got quite short yoke depths anyway. So yeah, I don't know. I look a bit ridiculous, so I'm going to take this off. So yeah, actually no, really happy with how this, I was really feeling a bit deflated with it, which is why I didn't get as much progress done on it as I thought I would. And yeah, I feel like I've been reinvigorated by that like mid-project block and try on. So yeah, I'm hopefully gonna get some good progress done on this. So yeah, this has been on my, I cast this on February the 16th, and it's been on my needles for 17 days. So it's still not like an insignificant amount of progress on like a full jumper for 17 days. But yeah, that brings me to my last whip, which is something that you haven't seen before, and it is something that it wasn't like a spur of the moment cast on, because I did swatch and everything, and it's been on my radar for a while, but the sudden kind of influx of spring and going through my daughter's wardrobe has meant that I found some gaps, and so I cast on this. So this is the Tulip sweater, the Tulip Sweater Kids by HIPKNITSHOP, and I am knitting this up in Drops Air so I'll do it in like order of how I've used them. So the ribbing at the bottom is parrot green, and then my main colour is light pink, if I hold these up this way, and then I've gone to lemonade, and then magenta, and finally morning mist. And these colours, I mean, I completely copied the colours that are in the pattern photo, which I will pop up over there. So yeah, I completely copied the colours that the designer used in one of her samples, but she used, I think they have their own yarn, so I decided to just go for what I had slightly more readily available. So this is all Drops Air, and I ordered this from Wool Warehouse. And yeah, I wanted something that was slightly more affordable as well, because I didn't know how, this is like completely out of my usual realm of knitting. So as you've probably seen from me, I usually knit things on much smaller needles. I usually use like anywhere between a 4-ply and a DK. I don't tend to go much higher than that very often. I mean, occasionally I'll use a worsted or an Aran, but it is mostly like sort of smaller gauge knitting. And this is not small gauge knitting. This is like, my main needle for this was an 8mm needle, and I don't think I have ever used an 8mm needle before. It feels like knitting with logs. But my ribbing is then done on 5.5, which is just insane. So I knit this up in the second size, which is age 4 to 5, and it's supposed to be sort of like a slightly cropped, really oversized, kind of like 80s feel sweater for a toddler. There is an adult version of this, which I'm considering for myself. Then I'm also like, am I just thinking of knitting myself an adult version because I've knit one for my daughter, and that seems like fun? Would I actually really get that much wear out of something like this? But this is a really light and airy, all over colourwork sweater on a really big gauge in a really light blown yarn. I wanted something light and airy that she can wear in spring, run around in and everything, and just have a really good sort of, like, just have something fun. So yeah, this is the inside, and there are so many ends. I just think it's really sweet, and she really enjoys it. She's gotten really into like choosing her own clothes, and I think I've kind of reached a bit of a point in her growing up where she wants to choose what she wants to wear, and she doesn't necessarily want to wear kind of like really, she wants to wear everything bright and colourful, and that is fine, because I am more than happy to knit her bright and colourful things. So yeah, this is the Tulip Sweater Kids, and it's a 14 stitches, 16 rounds. Yeah, so it's like 14 stitches, 16 rounds per 10 centimeters, so it's really big gauge. And like, despite the fact that it is a really big gauge, I don't think you can really get too many, like, it's not overly like gappy or anything, and I think it's going to fill out quite well with once it's been like washed and blocked. I did do a couple of modifications to the pattern. So it has you cast on with like a long tail cast on, and I chose to do a tubular cast on for the bottom ribbing, and then I like rearranged my stitches to get 2x2 rib. And the other sort of slight modification that I did was that the ribbing in the pattern photos, and the suggested colour for the ribbing is this main colour, this like light pink, and I've got like fluff tickling my nose, and I asked my daughter what colour she wanted for her top ribbing, and she decided she wanted the magenta. So yeah, it's like a nice little collaborative effort between the two of us. So all I've got left to do on this is sleeves, and I knit pretty much all of this on Saturday in one day because it was so quick. Like, it just took me like no time at all. There is a fair amount of colourwork flat in this, so everything kind of above, so it's knit bottom up, so everything above here is colourwork flat. I mean, there are a couple of stripes in there, but this like triangular motif, which doesn't really show up because I don't have a huge amount of contrast between those two yarns, but not the end of the world, and the triangles on the shoulders is all colourwork flat. I didn't find it too jarring or like uncomfortable because of it being such a large gauge, but I'm not a huge fan of colourwork flat. I think it's just because I'm out of practice of doing it. If I did it more often, I'd probably be fine, but yeah, it wasn't as sort of mindless as colour work in the round. But yeah, so that is how far I am. I've just got sleeves left to go, and I'm really looking forward to kind of being able to give this to my daughter for her to be able to wear. And yeah, I cast this on March the 2nd, and it has been on my needles for 2 days, so really not very long at all. So squishy. It's so squishy and light. And that is all of my knitting, and I have no acquisitions today. So yeah, if you would like to keep up with me on more of like a regular basis, then you can follow me over on Instagram. It's just knitsby.aj, I think. Is that my Instagram handle? I don't know, it will be here. And if you've enjoyed this video, then please do give it a like and hit the subscribe button if you want to catch up with me on a regular basis. But yeah, I would love to know what you are knitting, what you've got on your radar for spring, and yeah. But I'm going to wrap this up now. So yes, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for coming to hang out with me and listen to me ramble on about my knitting for another however long. And I will see you again next week with probably more whips. So yeah, happy knitting.